Hey, Mo, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, Chad, I'm super happy to be here. We kind of threw this together last week. You said you want to be on. I was like, sure, why not?
Well, I think it's such a good topic because we're coming into a little bit of a slower period. Commercial real estate, for the most part, usually shuts down around Christmas and then doesn't start back up until mid-January. And I find that that's a great time for people, not just to make resolutions, which comes January 1st for everybody, but just to have a little bit of extra time to think about how they can promote their business. So I thought it'd be great to have you on in advance of that. So for anyone that's has that little bit of a break, they can say to themselves, maybe 2024 is the year they start trying to add some social media into the business. And you and I have a mutual friend, Bob Knackle, who's arguably the most successful broker in the business. And he's on social media. So I don't think that there's any excuse for people to not be on social media right now if Bob Knackle can do it. So with that long-winded setup on this, what would be your sales pitch to somebody that's considering getting onto social media, but they're still hesitant?
That's a great question. My sales pitch to somebody who is not sold on social media yet. I would have to back that up and say that one of the biggest challenges that most people have is that they just inherently think that they're boring and that they don't have anything interesting to say. And one of my job is to pull that story out of them. So everyone has a story to tell, regardless if they think they have a story or not. They have a story to tell. So we have to kind of reframe the idea that social media, one, is just sales, and then because it's not. Social media is pulling people into your world and getting them to interact and engage with you on a personal level, which we don't normally get on social, especially when you're talking about commercial real estate, because you have all of these people that are just leased, just sold, and that's great. We need to see that you're doing business, but at the same time, I want to know, what was the deal behind that? How did you get that out of all these other brokers? You can go about it in a way that isn't boasting, but just saying, hey, it's because of my experience, I was able to get this deal. So social media is just another piece of real estate that people should be using as part of their marketing plan. It goes along with using mail, TV. I don't know how many people in commercial real estate still use TV, or if they use TV, but radio, hard copy mail, newsletters, text drops, voicemails, all the ways that you stay in contact with your clients. Social is another way to stay in contact with your clients. Your contacts are on social. It's, you can't say that they're not. They're on some platform somewhere. Even if it's Facebook, they're on social. They're all connected digitally.
That's really well said, and I agree with you. As I've been on social media for quite a long time. I've had a Twitter account since 2009, and that's probably actually where I'm most active right now. And I would even say I'd echo everything that you said about having a story to tell. Those are the people that I resonate the most with, that I've built connections with, and a lot of these people I've met in real life as well. And it's because they are providing more value and more information, more entertainment, more insight into who they are. So building on that, so let's say somebody was nervous to get on, be it that they felt that they were boring, maybe they didn't feel that they had anything to share. They wanted to dip their toe in. So somebody never been on, maybe they've been on social media, but they've been the lurker. They maybe see what everyone else has posted, but they actually haven't started any dialogue. They haven't shared much or anything. What would you say to somebody that's looking to dip their toe into 2024? Where would you start for the person that hasn't done much?
I would start with sharing not earned media, because we're not talking about earned media. It's what Beth Azor calls newsjacking. So it's sharing those stories, those articles that are pertinent to your industry or in your vertical, and then making valuable commentary on those stories. So yeah, you can post, say it's Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal has a thing about commercial real estate, but it's literally with it. You're an office rep, right? And they share some story about office, and that story about office happens to be either in your town or your community. You literally have eyes on the ground. You have boots on the ground, right? You have eyes on this market. Maybe the Wall Street Journal article is like not exactly clear as to what's happening. Take your personal experience, still share that article. Go ahead and do that. But add your personal opinion as to either why you agree, why you disagree. Hey, maybe the person who wrote it missed a couple of these points. Maybe they aren't seeing the big picture that there's a large employer that's going to be coming in the new year that's going to need office space. And so that's what you guys are waiting for. Adding that personal touch to those articles helps people understand where you're coming from. It still gives you an authority piece, and it lets people know that you are staying up to date on what's happening and what's being said in the media.
Love it. It's such an easy way to do it. And it's funny you mentioned Wall Street Journal. That's the only newspaper that I subscribe to because for that exact reason, they put out some really good content. And for somebody that wants to perhaps expand on that, or like you even said, here's part of the picture that they're missing. For the most part, if they're journalists, they don't have the same level of knowledge as somebody that's going to be in that market that can speak intelligently to it. So I love that idea. I think that's such an easy way for someone to get started on that. Part of the question that I had for you as well was related to what you shouldn't do. So that's an idea. And I want to dig into it a bit more too, because I'd really like to get your thoughts on what you've seen working, but as a corollary to the part of here, do some newsjacking. What are some of the things that you see that don't work or that people should avoid doing?
Anything that is that's really hard because it depends on your personality. If you're a contentious person and people in the market know you're a contentious person, then choosing something that's somewhat controversial and posting it and talking about it, that might be right. That might be your shtick. That might be your thing, right? However, that being said, and if we're talking particularly about LinkedIn and not about Twitter or X, trying to stay away from something that's too political or that's going to be super polarizing. That's always my best advice. Make sure that you're not upsetting your potential customers or clients and that they're going to get really mad at you because you do post something that they don't agree with. If you feel strongly about it, then I would hazard to, I'm trying to be really politically correct here. I would hazard to say you should post it, but be willing to back up your beliefs but anything that is polarizing, stay away from. That's my final answer.
Well, it's such a great point because I always like to associate social media with being in a large room, like at a networking event. Like there's so many parallels there. Like you can't go into a large networking group and just talk about yourself the whole time because people are just going to get bored. So there's a good thing with social media there as well. You can't just talk about yourself all the time. There has to be some value that you're providing, but you also don't want to go into a large networking group and just talk politics and especially controversial politics, because you're just going to alienate a good portion of the people that are there. So there are people that do it. I mean, that's LinkedIn less so, but on Twitter or X, I'm still going to call it Twitter. That's the name that I'm so familiar with. On Twitter, there are people that intentionally go on to start battles. And that's one thing that people don't realize is whether it's an anonymous accounts, and we could talk about anonymous accounts and all that.
Did you see the face I just made? I was like,
The anonymous accounts, that's the Twitter drama in its finest right there. So yeah, there are people that definitely go in and they will try to start doing things to get attention or get a reaction. So let's dive into that. What would you say to someone right now? Because it's hard to get up to speed on everything, right? With all the platforms there, like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. where would you suggest somebody get started? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Twitter? What would you do?
I recommend that they get started on LinkedIn because it seems to be less of a scary platform for a lot of people. It's more professional. It gets them into a cadence and a way of posting so that they understand that this is how the platform works. This is the kind of response that you'll get. And you can promote cross platforms, but respect the platforms, as we all like to say. So the content that you're sharing across platforms, if it's, if you have a graphic that goes with it, the graphic has to change dimensions so that it's good for each of the platforms. It's just, there's separate things to every single one. It's not a one size fits most. And then, of course, the other thing that I would recommend, if you haven't been active on the platforms, on any platform, is to actively engage with the core audience that you want to be with, right? Once you start actively engaging and the platform picks up, the algorithm picks up that you're going to be active, when you do post content, it's more likely to share your content with that audience that you're interacting with. So, LinkedIn would probably be the safest bet. Just because you already have your core audience there, you have the people that you interact with, those that you've met at networking events, past clients, people that you want to be connected with. And then I would say jump in and dive into Twitter X and see if you can hang. Because Twitter is it's a different animal. It really is. Twitter, back in 2016, back in the day, Twitter, the stat was like every 18. So like if you tweet, your tweet will lose half of its potency within 18 minutes. So if you had like an audience of 1,000 people, within 18 minutes, only 500 people will see that tweet. And then it just deprecates further and further as more time goes on. So that's why when you see people, you're like, why are they tweeting so much? It's because they know that it's a numbers game. You have to be tweeting continuously and consistently to get eyes on your content and that visibility. So if you want to jump into Twitter X and see what's happening within the retweet community, lots of valuable information, predominantly good people who aren't trying to stir the pot. But it is a good community.
It really is. And you're right. It's such a different platform. Because I've been on LinkedIn for quite a long time as well. And I don't know if I've ever had somebody write like a rude or a mean comment beyond just perhaps someone disagrees with me. And by all means, I want to have that feedback or I want to have that dialogue. But it's I can't even think of a time where I've had someone say something where I was offended. But on Twitter, I have
all day, every day,
all day, especially because I shit post the odd time. So I do the odd one just to intentionally get a little bit of reaction on it. So I get a lot of DMs that are really offensive, and I get comments all the time, and I welcome it. If you're going to go onto Twitter and go on that soapbox, and especially if you do try to stir the pot a little bit or post something that could be a little bit edgy, you are going to get people that are going to be really mean. So that it's a different platform altogether. I wouldn't, and you correct me on this if I'm wrong, I wouldn't let that dissuade people, because I was on Twitter for a number of years where I didn't have people saying things like that because I wasn't being a little bit edgy or controversial on that. So if you go on to Twitter, like Bob Knackle's a perfect example. Bob's account is very positive. Everything is either like a helpful anecdote or some quote. Where do you draw a line on Twitter between? Let's dive into Twitter more, because that's where I'm most fascinated with. I use Twitter way more than I use LinkedIn right now. So what is the strategy for Twitter? You mentioned it, completely different platform. How do you describe Twitter, and how does somebody navigate this jungle that we call retweet?
That's such a great question, because I've been on Twitter for such a long time, and I've been on since January of 2010. And I actually used Twitter. My job before being in social media was I worked in radio, and I was a news director. I've been an assistant program director. I've been on-air talent, kind of done all these things. And I loved Twitter. I love Twitter because it is so fast-paced, and being super ADHD, it's great for me because I can jump in a conversation, I can jump out of a conversation, I can go find something else. I think with the change, it's changed because there has been changes made to the algorithm that if you go outside of your lane now, so like my lane specifically for a very long time was country music and news, like local news for where I was working at, right? So very specific to those demographics and those markets. While switching over to commercial real estate exclusively, which is what I do for social now, I've been having to build that vertical back up. So I still sometimes get country music news on my feed, but not as much as I used to back in the day. So remember that if you've been talking about dogs and cats for the entire time that you've been on Twitter, jumping into the retweet community is not immediately going to get you recognized, because the algorithm has to pick up that you've switched your vertical that you're working in. So don't be surprised if it takes a little bit. And don't, you're not going to go viral. Like, I think so many people are just like, I want to go viral. No, actually you don't. Believe me, you don't, because then you get a lot of mean people. And if you don't have thick skin, then you're going to have a lot of mean people saying a lot of mean things to you in the comments and your DMs. So it will take time to build up that audience. The other thing is you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again. You're going to get tired of me saying it. You have to actively engage. You have to join in on other people's conversations, other people's posts. And it has to be more than, hey, this was a great post. It has to be, some sort of relevant commentary so that you start that engagement, you start that conversation. It helps you, and it also boosts the original poster. So don't be afraid to jump in and just get involved in conversations.
Love it. I think that is such a great point, and I would emphasize that as well, is you have to engage with people. And that's like, it's the networking analogy as well, as if you just walk into a networking room and start talking, well, who are you talking to? Like, you actually need to have conversations with people. So like I started getting real value from Twitter once I started doing that. Just exactly as you said, just start engaging with people, having conversations. They notice. People notice if you're actively engaging and adding something substantive, as opposed to just drivel, like you were saying, like, great post. And if you actually start having those conversations, then it really feeds into almost a loop. And I think that's where retweet has become valuable, is that there's so many people having conversations on there at any given time. And it's not just everybody agreeing on everything either. Like, someone could put out a post about something, industrial real estate trend for happening in 2024. And half the people will say, you're an idiot, that's wrong. And half people will say, I like where you're going with that. Like, there really is like a dialogue that happens on there, and it's fast paced. It's very, very quick on that. What's the goal on Twitter? I still haven't figured that out. What's a goal for somebody to actually spend the time on there and really long-term outlook? Because I'll tell you my philosophy first, and then you can tell me why I'm wrong. So I don't know if you ever saw the Batman movie where it was Heath Ledger was the Joker, and he's talking to I think he was talking to Harvey Dent, and he says, do I look like a guy with a plan? I'm like a dog chasing a car. I don't even know what I'd do if I caught the car. That's kind of my strategy. I don't have a strategy. I'm just a dog chasing a car, and that works for me because I don't look at Twitter necessarily as a place to earn business, although I have, but I really just enjoy getting to chat with people and having perspective from all over North America. But I still don't know what the end goal is or what the point of it all is besides having fun. So with all that said, what's the point of Twitter?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's so many people look at social media as being a way to garner more business or to get their name out there, and they forget the fun aspect of it. If you're not having fun on any of the platforms, why are you on the platform? It just boils down to that. I always advise my clients that my goal for them is top of mind awareness, so that when somebody thinks of, and I know we throw top of mind awareness around all the time, but I want global domination. So when somebody thinks New York City sales, I want them thinking Bob Knackel, right? When somebody thinks retail leasing Florida, I want Beth Azor to be top of mind. When someone thinks, real estate or commercial real estate coaching, I want Rod Santamassimo and the Massimo Group at top. I don't want them thinking of anybody else. That they should be front and center. So we're looking for global domination. But when it comes to Twitter itself, building a community, it's probably the fastest way that you are going to build a community for yourself, for your brand, and for your business. Because you can prove very quickly whether you know what you're talking about or whether you're full of what, right? Can't really hide that, as has been shown by the you know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
As has been shown by the guy accounts. So you're gonna get found out.
It took probably longer than it should have for that one particular guy to get exposed. And it's funny because I put out a question last week about, it was an electrical related question, and I had a guy account who I've followed for actually quite a long time, and he gave me such a great answer, and we actually DM'd back and forth a bit as well. So I could tell that this guy is the real deal just on how great of an answer he gave me. So it's almost a shame that one bad apple, and I think it is just one guy behind the Guy factory and everything there, that he gave such a bad name to all the accounts that genuinely wanted to be anonymous, but now they're painted with that same brush of being scammers when a lot of them aren't. How do you need to be public on Twitter, or can you? I guess this question would be a no-brainer 6 months ago. You could be anonymous because there's people that have done it. Can you do that today, or do you need to have a public account?
I think if you want to grow your business and you are the face of your business, your face needs to be forward. Flat out. I had one of those guy accounts come after me this past weekend. I was hot. Oh my gosh, I was hot. I was like, why are you getting into a pissing match with me? Like, there is no reason for us to be going through this right now. And I started typing out some stuff, and my husband's like, stop. Once it's on the internet, it's on the internet forever. And I was like, oh, I know. So I deleted my comment. I didn't post what I wanted to post. And I think there's more accountability if you're willing to show your face, right? Because you're not going to say some of this crap to somebody's face unless you're just an absolutely disagreeable person. And then if you're that disagreeable, nobody's going to be doing business with you anyway. So I think there is a place for some of the anonymous guy accounts or gal accounts or whatever you want to call them. But after a while, you're going to have to show your face. You're going to have to show that you're a real person and that you are actually doing what you said that you've been doing.
Yeah, I agree completely on that. So I love everything you're saying. I completely echo it. It's top of mind awareness, brand awareness, start engaging with people. It makes so much sense. It's a shortcut on how you can actually start getting traction on social media right away, is just by engaging with people. Maybe make a goal to have 3 comments a day on someone's post, and meaningful, thoughtful comments, and you'll immediately see an uptick. I love everything you're saying on that. On LinkedIn makes sense. The newsjacking, Beth Azor's idea. on Twitter, what's the strategy there? What do you recommend people to be tweeting on specifically there?
It's the same process. So, I always followed really the same thing that I used in radio that I learned from my old boss. And, as a news director and where I worked at, we had a military base right there. So anything that happened in DC, if it affected the Army, that was an opportunity for me to talk about that. So I always think about when I'm looking at news, like, how can I make this local? How can I make this personal? How can I share my thoughts, my ideas, my concerns, and then start that conversation? So don't think that you have to create all your own content. You can retweet or repost, now that we're calling it repost. You can repost somebody else's content and either agree with it or disagree with it, right? And you can do it in a respectful manner. You don't have to be a complete jerk about it. Like, you can be nice. Please be nice. You can do that. You can, I was like super irritated this morning, and all I tweeted out was sigh, grumble, grumble, sigh. And then I had people asking me if I was okay. And I'm like, yep, it's just a Monday, but I'm super comfortable just tweeting out whatever comes to my head. And if I have, that's a word of caution. If you have to question whether you should tweet something out, probably shouldn't be tweeting it out. So that's your word of warning. Your one tip for the day is if you have to question whether or not you should say it, you probably shouldn't say it.
Yeah, I'm like 98% good at that myself, but there's that 2% that always seems to get me in trouble. And you're right, it's best to not post that at all. But you gotta live a little and have a little bit of fun, and nothing like posting something and then having 20 DMs telling you how stupid you are.
Right. And so, like, I have a pretty foul mouth. I've been really good on this one. But I don't stop that on Twitter. So you're going to see me drop F-bombs. You're going to see me say colorful phrases that you've probably never heard before. But that's literally who I am. Like, you will hear me say that out loud in public. So don't be afraid to show your personality, but remember that once it's on the internet, it lives forever.
What's your advice for people to deal with trolls? And hopefully people don't get it if you're just being professional. You know what, even being professional, there's people I really respect on Twitter that are really good-hearted people, and they still get mean comments out of the blue. I get them, but I'm used to it. For me, it's just kind of water off a duck's back. But I've heard a lot of people say, I don't want to post things on there because whether they do have thin skin or they just don't want to have that that appearance that they post something and then someone calls them stupid for it. How do you deal with? How do you recommend people, or how do you yourself deal with trolls?
I play along with them first. Sometimes I play along with them. Other times I just don't feed them. I don't respond. Especially if I know that they're trolling. There was this whole stupid conversation this past weekend on Twitter where somebody had posted up a photo of some really weak coffee. And I made the comment, I was like, you must be in Minnesota. This looks like the kind of coffee that my neighbors would serve me. And she said, Ohio. And I was like, same difference, right? Like, I'm just being a smart aleck. This guy from Minnesota, went after me tooth and nail for hours. Called me a Karen, called me ignorant, called me all of these names. And then I was like, what was the last thing he said? One of the last things he said was something about me being a white Karen. And I was like, what does being white have to do with it? And I'm like, by the way, I'm Mexican. So that's not really an insult or a slur. And he's like, ha, 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 ha. Yeah, just because you're 23 and me says you're, I'm like, oh, buddy. And so I just was like, I just left the okay. Was like, okay. And then he just continued to come after me. And I was like, you know what? Block. Boop. Good. We're done. it's kind of hard to turn around and call somebody a reverse racist, but that's like, dude, you just like insulted everything about me being female, me being Mexican, it was just super over a cup of coffee, like coffee. Yeah, it was just wild. So if you have to, just block them, or my favorite feature has been mute. Just mute them. Been muting a lot of people. So I mean,
Yes.
it depends on how much, like, it depends on how bored you are. Like, how much time do you have on your hands to deal with something like that? And two, if you're super invested, keep fighting the good fight. But honestly, don't feed the trolls. Just let it go.
Yeah, it's such great advice. Don't feed the trolls. I kind of look at it that I welcome mean comments. Like I welcome it. I'd lean into it actually. Maybe that's just like a weird mindset I have, but looking at it from like an algorithm standpoint, and I have a YouTube channel as well, and YouTube heavily rewards comments, so much so that you like to have good comments, but the negative comments from an algorithm standpoint are still as valuable. So I'm all for it. I had someone the other day call me a horse. They said that I had something about a horse in my video, and the comment was, "You look like a horse," and I was like, perhaps I do, but like there's just a personal attack. I loved it. I'm like, I'm all for it. So like, I sometimes feeding the trolls. I'm with you. Like 99% of people should not feed the trolls. It just isn't worth it. Move on. It takes up time. Like most people don't have time to start getting into all these random arguments with strangers that they don't even know. It just takes away energy. It takes away things from your life. But having some trolls, if you look at it, the mindset that a lot of trolls, they're intentionally doing it. Like they just want to see who they can. Yeah, thanks for the engagement. And they want to see if they can get a reaction from someone. So they will say something really mean. And then there are some people that are just assholes, and they will just be really mean. Like that guy who was talking your joke about coffee. That's ridiculous. Why do you even have to like engage in that? I can tell how unhappy that guy is.
It was super wild. It was absolutely, I was just like, are you really? And he's like, oh, just because you had neighbors from Minnesota. I was like, dude, I freaking lived in Northwest Minnesota for 6 years, okay? I dealt with the cold. I dealt with the bad coffee. Like, I am an expert. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, you did the right thing. It's because guys like that, I block them too. Like life's too short. If you're getting into like actually heated conversations like that, and the guy's not making any sense, he's just being an asshole for the sake of it. I agree. Just mute, block, move on. Life's too short for that.
But now here's the caveat to that. So every like bad interaction or everything that happens on one platform, I will always take that story over to LinkedIn, and I'll tell the story over there as to what you should do or what you shouldn't do. So everything is content. So I'm still formulating the story over this cup of coffee on how I'm going to share it on LinkedIn, and but it's going to be a story coming up this week. So I can't wait to talk about like probably don't feed the trolls or don't give coffee to the trolls. We'll see what happens with that.
That's so good, because you're right. I've done that before too, like using something that happened on one platform to tell it on another one. And it's just different audiences. Like there is some overlap on people that will be active on LinkedIn and active on Twitter. But what I've found anyways is that most people pick a lane, that they're active on one or over the other. So you can use that story on the other one. People are like, oh, that's because I'm curious to see what story you tell on this on the coffee one. It's like, to me, that's such great content.
It was so wild. Well, it's just like the same dude that tried to call me out on Twitter last week about, I think, in fact, maybe you commented on that post. He was asking me about my credibility. And I was just like, so I took his tweet and it's a guy who does like, allegedly he has like 100 accounts that he runs for We Twit Folks or something like that. And he's like calling me out because I only have like 2,000 followers. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to use this. So I used that tweet. I quoted it. I was like, I don't know about my credibility, and what's even more amusing about that whole thing is that he had been retweeting BK's tweets and like like quoting Bob Knackle. I was like, and the irony was just like, it was beautiful. So I did take that story and I shared it on LinkedIn. Just because it's just like, like this dude is trying to call in my credibility. And I was so thankful and grateful that people jumped on that thread and they're like, she kind of knows what she's talking about. Mm-hmm. She's kind of been around for a little bit. So maybe you want to back off. I was like, thank you, people. This is awesome. I love it.
And especially the guy who's made that tweet in the first place has zero credibility himself. The irony of it all is just...
Yeah, and I mean, that was one where I could have gotten really ugly, and I could have just been like, well, I do this and this and this for so-and-so, and I do this and this and this for this other person. I was like, you know what? Nah, I'm not gonna do that. There's no point in doing that. So it was really nice to see. So this is one of the good things about the retweet community. It was good to see people kind of stick up for me and go, hey, do you know who she like manages? Like, do you know the social media accounts that she manages? Like, maybe you should shut up.
So there's a few that you have. You've got Bob, Beth, Rod. Mm-hmm. What does that look like if there's somebody out there that wanted to hire you? How does that work? And you don't need to get into anything specific, but just broadly, how does it work for someone to hire you?
Definitely. So one of the things we do is we obviously go through, and it's going to sound kind of maybe snobby on my end. I want to make sure that I'm going to mesh with your personality. I have been doing this a long time. And if I get like a feeling in the pit of my stomach that this person is going to be difficult to work with, I won't work with them. I'll be like, I'm at capacity right now. Because there's certain things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who are willing to be good storytellers. And part of that is through our conversation. When we do a discovery call, like a consultation, I check to see what they've been doing on social media. If they've been doing anything at all. I really like talking about the potential of creating content pillars. Everybody needs to have content pillars. I'm sure you have your content pillars already, lined up, even if they're not concrete and in stone, that what you can talk about. And so helping my clients discover what those content pillars are. People like BK and Rod and Beth, they have such a wide variety of content to already pull from that it's a dream. Beth has 2 books. Rod has 5. 1, 2, 3. Rod has 5. No. Yes, Rod has 5. I didn't think about that. I'm like, how many books does Rod have? BK doesn't have a book, but literally BK has like emails from like 1990. I don't know. And I don't know if they're from 1990, but he kept everything. So there's like this repository of content that we can just pull from. And so it makes it really nice. If somebody wants to chit chat with me, they can connect with me online. And I'm always there to do a quick consult or, hey, maybe you should do this. So I hope that answered your question. I don't know if it did.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's another thing that is a genuine concern for people is that they just feel that they don't have time to do it. And that struggle is real. There is only so much time in the day to do things. And personally, I don't watch TV. I'm terrible at watching, even following along with sports. Someone was making fun of me the other day that I could only name like 15 people in the NFL. That's how pathetic I am from that. But I spend a lot of time on social media. So that's kind of like my outlet. But there are people out there that love fantasy sports, or they love watching TV, or they love certain things, and they just don't have time. So I think it is important to know that there's services out there like yourself that can still get the accomplishments that you're looking for, like the ultimate outcome of the brand building and everything that comes with it without having to devote a lot of time to it. So I think at the bare minimum, people should be following along with you because you're awesome to follow. You're one of my favorite followers I have on Twitter, people that I follow. So I'll put links to everything on there for people to follow your LinkedIn, people to follow your on Twitter or X, and your website. And I just encourage people to follow along because you put out some great content. You're a perfect example of what to do on there. So if nothing else, people will learn a lot just from seeing you in action.
I think also people get stopped by the fact that they feel like they need to post content, and so they just post crappy content. Don't post crappy content. The more you post crappy content, the more people are going to stop paying attention to what you have to say. So if you feel like you have to post because you think you have to post, and it's what I've actually talked about this. I've talked about it in an Instagram post. I talked about it in another podcast. It's what I call Earl Scheibing your social media. And let me explain who Earl Scheib is. So I'm originally from California. Earl Scheib was a guy who used to paint cars. And he had a commercial, and he looked like the Crypt Keeper from, I can't remember the name of the show, but Tales from the Crypt. So he's just old. I mean, he's probably always old. But I remember him just always being old. And he would say in these really bad commercials, I'll paint any car for just $99.95. And he used to drag the 5 out. So it was just awful. Now, when they would paint your car, they would literally paint your car. If you didn't tape off the windshield got painted. If you didn't tape off the wheels and the hubcaps, they got painted. So, and if you wanted them to tape, the tape was extra for you. So it was, Earl Scheibing your social media is where it's just kind of that one brush of where you pick up a pack of templates from somebody, and bless all the people that make the templates. Your hustle is great. I love you. This happens more in residential real estate than it does in commercial real estate, probably because they're more prolific on social media. But you can go through your feed, and when a new pack gets dropped, you can see all the same posts. It's the same copy. It's the same hashtags. The only thing that they've done is they've changed out their picture and their company logo. That becomes digital noise, and nobody pays attention to that. When you think about residential real estate agents, top of mind awareness for me, Ryan Serhant, right? Mm-hmm. Like immediately. What's his last name? Ferris? No, Ferry. Tom Ferry. Another one that pops to mind. There's Carla. I think her name is Carla DiMatteo. She's out of California. She's amazing. The reason why I bring those people up, their social media is not an Earl Scheib job. It is a personalized. You're going to find out about me and what I stand for and what my company stands for. And we're going to be a little kooky and crazy, and we're going to show our personality. So if you feel, let me get to my point that I'm making. If you feel that you have to post just to post, don't do it. It's just going to become digital noise. You're not going to be happy with the results. People are not going to pay attention to you, and the algorithm is going to ignore you.
And people are going to ignore you. It's just the same thing going to. I feel cliche keep saying that the networking event. You just have to treat it the same way you would being in a large group of people. It just happens to be online as opposed to in person. But you want to be somebody that other people want to be around. And saying things just for the sake of saying it is going to annoy people. So everything works against you. The algorithm will work against you. The community, people aren't just going to get engaged, and it's actually doing the opposite of what you're trying to do. So, yeah, I completely agree with what you say there.
And you want to authentically engage. And by that, authentic gets thrown around a lot, and it's almost one of those terms that's like, ugh. But you want to be the same person. Like I tell people, I'm literally the loud, obnoxious Mexican that you see right here in front of this camera in person. Like that's just my personality. I'm loud. I'm bubbly. I'm comfortable in my skin, and I don't have a problem sharing that on social. If you're more reserved, that's absolutely okay. That is fine. But the same person that shows up online should show up at that networking event. That's the same person that should be there. So there's not this disconnect between, oh, this is how they behave online, but now I've met them in person and they're totally different. And it's like, it's almost like Bizarro World, right? And I've seen it happen where you have this very loud personality online, and then you're at a networking event and they just kind of stand there. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, what happened to this? I really loved your content. I thought it was great. And you've got the deer in the headlight look because you're, maybe you're an introvert, right? So networking events are horrific for you. But if you were to share that on social, that hey, yes, I'm this way online. At networking events, though, I have a secret, right? That would be a great hook, right? I have a secret. I hate networking events. Here's why. And then you can talk about being an introvert. You can talk about, maybe there was one time that you got hit with a dodgeball at an event when you were a kid. And so now you hate being around people. I don't know what the story is, but share that story. And then you would get people that have that same energy coming and finding you. They're going to be attracted to you because they're just I love that story you shared. I totally get that. I remember when I was in Girl Scouts, you know what I mean? So it's about adding that bit of relatability to show that you are being authentically you online so that when they meet you in real life, you are the same person.
Love it. So well said. So I want to give the final word to you on this. And again, on the basis that someone might be watching this going into 2024. Maybe they haven't been on social media. Maybe they've been a lurker. Maybe they just want to step up their game. What's your message for somebody taking a little bit of a break going into 2024? What's your message to them on how they can get more value out of social media next year?
Start engaging with the people that you'd want to engage with. That's my biggest thing for anybody who wants to get started in social. Engage with those accounts that you want to be involved with and start conversations in the comments. Don't be afraid to share other people's posts. First of all, the algorithm will thank you and that person will thank you because you shared their post. And stop overthinking the whole thing. Everybody wants to be professional. Everybody wants to show their good side to the camera. And while that's all well and good, we don't relate to that. You and I just bonded over trolls because they were mean, right? That's a shared experience. Shared experiences are what makes social media so good. So don't be afraid to talk about some of the things that didn't go well. Don't be afraid to share out loud, hey, I hate going to drinks after work. I just want to go home and be with my family, right? Or even showing your humanity. I shared a story about, this is horrible. I shared a story about my husband almost dying from anaphylactic shock. He's apparently allergic to duck eggs, and we had no idea. But it's being able to share that human experience. Did it have anything to do with commercial real estate? Nope. Did it have anything to do with social media? Nope. But it's a story that it's hey, you got to be aware of those food allergies. So don't be afraid to share some of the stuff that you would normally think wouldn't resonate, and really just get out of your head.
Mic drop. Perfect. Such great advice. Love it. So good. Okay. Well, I won't take any more of your time. Thanks for accommodating this on short notice and for me getting the time zones mixed up on my end. So thanks for being so flexible on that. And I just look forward to continuing getting to know you better and interacting with you on social media. So this was awesome. Really appreciate just the time and insights that you had on this. And I'm sure people will connect with you after just seeing how genuine and helpful you are in all this. So loved it. Mo, thanks so much once again.
Thank you, Chad, for having me on. I appreciate you.